The Board of Trustees of the Harris County Department of Education now convened in a board meeting on Wednesday, July 18th, 2018 in the boardroom at 6300 Irvington Boulevard at 1:13 p.m. I wish to extend a warm welcome to everyone present and this meeting of the Board of Trustees. As trustees, we are here to set goals, listen to reports from the superintendent, to approve budgets, contracts, personnel appointments, and make policy for the district. It is not the role of the board to make day-to-day operational decisions. The management and day-to-day operations of the department are the responsibility of the superintendent. We have policies and procedures in place to resolve concerns and issues. This is a public meeting of the Board of Trustees, not a meeting of the public. Prior to this meeting, board members receive information related to items on today's agenda. Agenda items will not necessarily be handled in the order listed on the notice. The meeting is open to all who wish to attend and hear the matters discussed. During the course of this meeting, the board may determine that a closed session is necessary. In that event, the board will meet in closed session to consider matters duly posted for this meeting as permitted by sections 551.071 to 551.084, inclusive of the Texas Government Code. I respectfully ask that you please refrain from talking while others are speaking and that cell phones are turned off or in silent mode. Thank you for taking the time today to join us and for your interest in the Harris County Department of Education. We will have invocation by Ms. Tolbert from purchasing. There she is. Is that charisma? Okay. Just want to make sure I got it right. Y'all please stand.
Every head bowed and eyes closed. Lord, we thank you for the many blessings that you have bestowed upon us. For we know that it is the fervent prayers, unwavering faith, tireless works that has allowed this organization to continue to serve the children of Harris County. Lord, as the members of our board prepare to make decisions that govern our organization, we ask that you grant each one of them wisdom and understanding, that they keep the children and the shaping of their lives at the forefront of their minds. And Lord, as we continue to receive recognition for the outstanding work that we do, let us always remain careful to give you all the glory, honor, and all of the praise. It is in your Son, Jesus' name, that we pray. Amen.
The Pledge of Allegiance to the U.S. flag and the Pledge of Allegiance to the Texas flag will be led by Ms. Harris from Business Solutions.
Hello. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
All right, we're going to have a public hearing for the purpose of considering the proposed HCDE fiscal year 2019 budget. This is an open hearing, and you do not have to have signed up if you wish to speak. Mr. Masco, how you doing?
Yes. Let me provide you with a quick overview of the budget proposal, and I will give you an overview. It's just a one-pager that you have in your packet. The general fund appropriations are $52,546,246, with net transfers out of $4,321,950. Special revenues or grants of $34,442,824. Debt service fund of $3,149,497. Capital project for AB West Construction, $12,500,000. Internal service fund, $5,728,496. Enterprise fund, $2,567,144. And then transfers out of $6,441,170 for a total budget to be approved of $117,335,372. To my left, we have the budget process, a planning cycle for the whole year, which basically we start early in the year. In February, we go through budget reviews and SWOT analysis, needs assessment, We review every division. We meet with the superintendent, provide recommendation to the Board of Trustees. We've had a budget workshop and provided all the information and posted it on our website. And now we're ready to recommend for approval at the regular board meeting. We're required by the Education Code to have a public hearing over all funds. And so here is a public hearing that's required by the Education Code.
Thank you, Dr. Mesqua. Does anybody in the public wish to comment? Well, Ms. Vera, come on up. Afternoon, I guess it is.
Good afternoon. I'm Colleen Vera, retired teacher and taxpayer. And I just had two questions about the budget. First is on Fortis Academy. If you're actually, I'm confused because when I read online it said you opened last year, but are you actually going to be opening this school year? And if so, because it said you hired counselors and 5 teachers and stuff, but I can only find contracts for 2 students. So I didn't know how much money you're budgeting to keep it afloat until you actually get more contracts and actually get up to 30 or 60 kids, or what. I didn't know what kind of budget it was coming out of. It's coming out of the, is that an enterprise fund or general fund? I couldn't quite figure that out. And also the JJAEP, the letter that y'all sent to the JJAEP council said that you're willing to discuss providing funds to address things like facilities and staff. And I didn't know how much funds you're talking about here, and also what kind of funds. Is that more general funds, or is that some kind of enterprise fund? If that could be explained, it would be really helpful to support this budget.
Okay.
Thank you.
You were the Mr. Mesqua, Dr. Mesqua.
Dr. Mesqua.
Dr. Mesqua?
Thank you.
Our Fortis Academy is budgeted in the general fund, and we have identified and projected approximately 200,000 last year, and then 400,000 for the new year. And so we're projecting that the school will open in August with some contract seats that have already been coming forward to the board. As it opens, we continue to recruit and bring in contracts to the board to continue facilitate the program for the year. We've budgeted the same as last year. We have the Turning Point contract to provide counseling services, and we have the staff to be able to service our students for the current year.
So I think one of the things she pointed out is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, she said currently she's found where we have 2 seats contracted with Fortis, is that correct?
Right, and we're projecting 30 for the year.
Okay, so currently right now, to make up for the lack of contracted seats, I take it you have the money you mentioned was going to help subsidize the Fortis's operation until such time as more seats are contracted?
Right, part of our development plan targeted that we're going to have a time to be able to recruit and be able to bring in some of those contracts.
Okay.
And I just wanted to add with Fortis that our goal was to open up at the beginning of this past school year. We were unable to do that. We opened up around spring break, and unfortunately it was right around testing time, which made it difficult to fill seats. And so we've been working diligently along with the school districts and Turning Point and going out to the ISDs to secure those contracted seats. But it certainly didn't start off with the momentum that we were looking for from the very beginning. And I think part of that was trying to do a mid-year starting opening, which we knew ahead of time that was going to be a problem. I have personally gone out and spoken to superintendents. Dr. Mays and Mr. Parker also have. It was never our goal to open up with 80 or 60 students. And so this year we would like to start the school year off with having some students in there, but certainly building into it throughout the year.
Now, did Harvey have any any impact on you?
I think the biggest impact certainly was Harvey, which delayed some of the construction. But I think that the stoppage of Fortis and then restarting it, you know, if you lose a week on the front end, you're going to lose a month in the back end. And so things just got pushed back. And I think it was a combination of getting construction done, and then also trying to project an actual opening date where we would have the facility up to snuff to be able to have students in there, and then conveying that message out to the ISDs to get them to secure contracts. But Fortis is an anomaly, and I think our board has to recognize that. There's nothing that's ever been in the county similar to Fortis. And that's not always an easy sell to superintendents when they've not heard of a school like that before. And we really didn't anticipate that either. So it's been a learning experience.
Furthermore, there's an agenda item to further add some additional needed alarm system at the campus that will be, so we can have it ready by August. And so that's in the process of part of our construction program.
And Dr. Amesqua, the second part of Ms. Farah's question was about the JJEP.
Oh, okay. We have benefit variance that over the years we have transferred from our choice programming to the general fund that have accumulated also our fund balance. And so we will be able to target some of that to be able to address some capital projects as it may be needed for the JJEP. But that's the benefit variance that Mr. Sumner, so over the last few months we have addressed of basically what do we call the benefit variance that comes from choice that goes to the general fund that ends up in our fund balance.
And I would like to add, along with how we've done things in the spirit of HCDE, if we do end up running the JJAP, we would have a developmental plan committee meeting to determine exactly what that looked like. So we actually address the facility needs with precision and not just randomly do things. And so we would put together a proposal and present that to the board and look for their action moving forward. It's not just a blank check that we're going to go in and do this, that, and the other two facilities, but we certainly would want it to be up to our standards.
I have a question. Can you clarify when you said we opened the Fortis around spring break? There's not a student over there yet, correct?
No, we
Okay.
were prepared to accept students
Okay.
at the time, but we didn't have contracts at the time to have the students there. So,
Is there anybody else that would like to? Go ahead, Dodd.
This is a follow-up to the previous question. We sent them a letter saying that we would expend some of our funds to take over that program?
So just as a clarification, I want to make sure I honor our agenda at the same time. I shared with the board the letter that we sent to the officials governing the JJAP that said that there could be an opportunity where we could address facilities.
Does anybody else in the public like to ask a question or make a comment about the budget? All right, hearing none, I'm going to go forward with the rest of our meeting then. So, we do appreciate you all taking the time to come see us and listen to us and to observe our board meeting. I have 4 visitors signed up. I have 2 students. I have, Beata Handler and Ricardo Rangel. Welcome. And then, thank you. Hello. And then we also have Danny Norris, and we have Andrea Duhan. Welcome. And then addressing the board, I have 2 people. Ms. Vera, you're first up.
Good afternoon again. Again, my name is Colleen Vera, and I'm a retired teacher and a taxpayer. And I want to address item 8E, expanding the Hillco contract to $18,350 a month. I just want to remind there are 5 board members here who ran on the Republican Party plank when they ran for office for this board. And the plank number 217 that was just approved in the state platform, it says we urge that the Texas legislature enact legislation that prohibits tax-funded contract lobbying, which is basically what you're doing right now, is you're acting to extend that type of contract. Republican voters in Texas find that so disagreeable that they made it one of the top 5 legislative priorities for this session. So I urge the 5 Republicans on this board to think about that very carefully before you vote, because another thing that they did for us this time is they allowed the Rule 44 censure for local office holders, not just state office holders. So I ask you to please honor the Texas platform. You ran as a Republican. I expect you to vote as a Republican and not be like people in Washington that we criticize all the time, who run as a conservative and then when they get to office they decide to be something else. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Mark Ennis. I'm a construction worker. Sometimes I work at schools or in the schools. I'd like to talk about focusing on education, specifically academics, specifically reading, and suggesting college level courses in high schools. When I went to college, I found out that I was lied to in high school. They said, you need chemistry, you need physics, and then I had to take stuff that I could have taken in high school. Also, I took a geology class in the University of Wisconsin. I would say it would be junior high level, about 7th grade. That's my estimation on how easy the geology class was at the university. Obviously, there's a scam going on here. I know you don't have nothing to do with it. I'd like to, now getting back to focusing on education, I want to share what William Bennett, Secretary of Education, said. It was an example and an anecdote. He would go to a school district and they'd say they need money. That's what they'd always say. And he'd say, let me look at your books. And he'd open the books and say, you've got crosswalk guards. Does anybody walk to school without their parents? Well, no, nobody. Okay, lay some people off. And immediately the crosswalk guards would be unionized and get a raise and a benefit package in a school district that says they need more money. And William Bennett, that was an anecdote. This was all over is what he implied, and that's what he said. He moved on to become a drug czar. I'd like to give an example of a couple organizations that are focused. I seen a van with the letters search on the side, and I asked the guy, do you help everybody? He says, no, only the homeless. And then I went to an AA center with my friend one evening, and I seen a sign on the door. It says, if you need food, clothing, shelter, or money, call this number below. This AA club is for substance abusers. And I'm just mentioning two agencies that they're taking care of emergencies. And that's what they're doing, and they're doing a good job of what they're doing, and they refer people with other needs to the proper agency. And I've heard mention that there are those who believe the school should be a one-stop shop for everything a student needs. And then on top of that, there's social causes and social concerns and just good ideas that everybody thinks are good that the school just adopts and takes under their wing. And I just want to bring that to your attention, and I want to affirm what Vera says. I don't have specifics here, but you know the specifics. You know what is controversial, and so I want to conclude and say thank you for the time.
Okay, so now we're on reports and presentations. Let me turn this thing on. We're on reports and presentations. Will be the Superintendent Monthly Report by James Colbert Jr.
Thank you, President Evans. The only thing I have to report is last week was the National Conference for Schools in Recovery. And Parker, you're going to have to help me with the acronyms. There was the ARS and the ARHE conference. What do those stand for?
Is the Association of Recovery Schools, and ARHE is the Association of Recovery Schools in Higher Education.
And there was a third component also.
AAPG, the Association of Alternative Peer Groups.
So, thank you. So this is the national conference, and it's a combination of higher ed colleges that have recovery components in their universities, and then also what we see at the public ed and private high school level. We had attempted for some time to be able to present at this conference, and unfortunately we had missed the deadline. We found out last minute on Monday afternoon that we were going to have an opportunity to present because one of the presenters got sick. We had a day to put a presentation together, And myself, Mr. Parker, Dr. Mays, and Dr. Moten had the opportunity to do a presentation. And I would just like to report to the board that we did a very good job in representing Harris County Department of Ed. We talked about the trials and tribulations that we had gone through with Fortis and how we've struggled and even underestimated some of the difficulties that we would have, and we were extremely transparent. The interesting thing that came from that was two things. One, we found out that our struggles weren't uncommon. In fact, they were universal. We had representatives from Minnesota, Michigan, Philadelphia, Florida, Washington, all over the country. And so absolutely many of the things that we've dealt with, it's not an uncommon issue. But the other thing that happened is there happened to be someone sitting in the audience that sits on the board for that national conference and sits on the board at the White House, who came to me afterwards, and she said that, y'all did an incredible job. But next year, I'm going to advocate for y'all to be the keynote speakers of this conference. And so we may be struggling, may not have students at this very moment in Fortis, but there's no question that the concept and the courage our board has had and helping and supporting us to put it together, it will be unprecedented, and it's going to take time. And so I look forward to hopefully being able to be part of that keynote speaking opportunity next year and continuing moving forward with supporting the students of Harris County. That's all I have, sir.
Thank you. And one point I forgot to mention to y'all, you know, we have two trustees that are connected to us by Skype. We have one trustee, Erica Lee Carter. She's joining us from Saudi Arabia, and trustee Dr. Diane Troutman is joining us from Colorado. But they wanted to make sure they were here to participate with the board. So we thank y'all for joining us. All right, annual update of the HCDE Business Service Division. Dr. Abasqua, Assistant Superintendent for Business Services, you're up again.
We have copies of the report, and we're going to take both business office and purchasing at the same time. We prepared a video, a quick video, and then we'll go into our presentation. Hi, I am Jesus Amezcua, and our presentation revolves around three facets. First, the staff, who is the backbone of the department. Two, the leadership of the department. And three, the performance of the department as a whole. We have national awards, and we have an excellent financial ratios and performance. You will see that in our presentation next.
Hi, my name is Rosa Maria Torres. I'm the Chief Accounting Officer. The Business Service team strives to provide excellent customer service in the area of accounting, budgeting, accounts payable, accounts receivable, and payroll. Providing timely and accurate information is a primary focus of our department.
Hi, my name is Yolanda Davis, and I supervise payroll and accounts payable division, where excellent customer service is our goal.
Hi, I am Brandy.
Hi, I'm Desiree.
I am Anna.
We are the accounts payable specialists. We process over 10,500 transactions each year, totaling $16 million.
Hi, my name is Priscilla Hines.
And I'm Deanna Garcia. We're in the payroll office. We process over $46 million in payroll each year for over 1,200 employees.
Hi, I'm Shaquia Harris, your accounts receivable specialist, and I process more than 29 million invoices each year.
Hi, I'm Jaime Martinez. I coordinate the annual budget process for over $102 million in revenue and $117 million in expenditures. Our budget book earns prestigious awards from JFOA and ASBO.
Hi, we are the HCDE accounting team. I'm Stephanie.
I'm Fatty.
I'm Marcia.
And I'm Lynette.
We are the proud recipients of 5 National Excellence Awards each year.
We report the financial condition of the department on a monthly basis for over 27 funds.
Hi, I'm Bill Monroe, Director of Purchasing at HCDE. We provide staff training in P-card usage for new and refresher courses in P-cards, and we provide a portion of the FOG training, the Financial Operating Guidelines training.
Hi, I'm Kendra.
Jaritza.
Charisma.
Inga.
And I'm Bill. We're with the HCDE Purchasing Division, and we process 2,216 purchase orders, totaling $17.2 million. We issued 53 RFPs and managed 91 cards on the HCDE P-Card program. Our division has been awarded the prestigious purchasing awards from both TASBO and the National Procurement Institute, NPI.
And I am Daisy Rubio, Business Office Admin Assistant. If you have any questions, come by Suite 120 or contact us at 713-696-8249. We will be happy to assist you.
And I'd like to present your Business and Purchasing Office. They're sitting right behind. Could you stand, please?
I will start.
We have a brief overview of both departments. So we have detailed reports in your packet, but I'll just go through about 10 slides, so stay within our time limit. Our goals, our focus is linked to our board goals, and we earn the transparency stars from the state of Texas. We provide training sessions not just internally but also to school districts. This is a training that I did in South Texas, and these are principals, future principals, and assistant principals that were in the audience. Our leadership group has over 110 years of experience between the three staff at the department level. We have a systems of control, and we focus on strength, and we call ourselves the WOW Rocking Division. We have 22.5 full-time equivalents, 2.6% of our budget. We have excellent ratings and financial indicators. We have no management, letter to management comments. We're EDGAR compliant and a leader in this area. We implemented a risk assessment process into our system, our fraud awareness process. We have 8 national awards, and we have over 335 attendees in our School Finance Council and leadership meetings, and over 890 attendees at our webinars. We present at our TASBO and ISM conferences nationally. Since 2007, our assets have increased by 23 million. Our investments have increased by 26 million. Our debt has gone up by 1.1 million. And our revenues are diversified for the current year, making up 36% of our grants, 26% of our fees, 1% in direct costs, taxes 22%, debt service 3%, charges 6%, and others at 6%. Our performance ratios and indicators, which we provide monthly, but this is for the whole year. Our repayment analysis, we are at 5%. Our liquidity analysis are 2.77, a strong 2.77% of our current ratio. Our debt to asset ratio is 36%. Our profitability analysis, return on assets is 4%, and return on equity, it will be at 10%. Our financial analysis, we are at bonded debt capital of $5.89. Property taxes per capita, $5.43. Our debt service low is 4%, and our unassigned fund balance is at 23% of their overall assets. And our efficiency is that we have $2.2 million in net operating results last year. We also provide in the public, and it's posted on our website, our our expenditures and revenues over the last 5 years per capita, and you see a trend of basically we're at $18 per capita that we operate revenues and expenditures. It used to be in the 22, 23 area. We're at $18, and that's on a population of 4.5 million in the county. Our tax and supported debt, we're only 3.75. And 0.80 in maintenance tax, and that's over a 5-year horizon. You see the change over the 7-year, or rather the 10-year horizon. Purchases per capita, 1833 versus 1580, which means that our authorizations are 18, and we end up spending only 15.8 at the end of the year. Contracts by sector. Our purchasing contracts that the board awards and approves, the majority being construction, school, security, and these are the sectors that the controllers recommend. So we had to categorize every payment according to those sectors. So you'll see for 2016 and 17 the different sectors. And this is our staff, and we'll have any questions that you may ask us regarding our department.
Anybody have any questions?
Thank you. If I'd like to add, the 2 students that are in the audience are my students, and you have 3 of my students working for us, which is Jaime, Marcia, and Fadi. So, where?
The 2 that were introduced were your students?
They are currently my students.
I guess you got a good instructor, right? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, annual update on the HCDE purchasing division. Oh, that was already there? You did that one also? Yes. Okay. Report of the Board Feasibility Subcommittee. Don Sumner.
Yes, I'd like to announce that this morning we met earlier and with the Facilities Committee, and that we are planning on opening the AB West School in time for next year's school beginning if everything goes okay. So we'll have a brand new school to replace the older school, which is pretty much obsolete at this point for the start of the school year next year.
Okay, other reports from board members concerning attendance or participation in a board or HCD-related conference, event, activity, or committee, or accolades for an HCD staff member or other deserving person. Do I have anything? Does I see Erica raise her hand? No. All right. Monthly financial reports through 6/30 of 2018. Dr. Mesqua.
We have 2 reports. The first one is a financial highlights report. As of June 30th, and also a budget amendment report as of July 18. All our reports are posted on our website. Our balance sheet for the general fund as of June 30th, we have assets of $38,220,505, liabilities of $1,948,625, and fund equity of $38,220,505. Our general fund balance in the 5 categories, we have non-expendable $163,555, not restricted, committed at $1,575,000, assigned $8,078,379, and unassigned at $16,871,140. Our financial ratios as of June, being 10 months into the year, we're at 41% in the percentage of fund balance to expenditures ratio. Last year we were at 35%. The working capital ratio, we're at 36 million versus 35 million. That's very similar to last year. Our unassigned fund balance, 43% versus 41% last year. Our debt to income ratio, we're at 7% versus 6% last year. Our tax revenue to total revenue ratio for this year, we're at 29% versus 25% last year at the same time. And our indirect cost to tax ratio, we're at 3% versus 2%. We just received a new indirect cost ratio for the new year, and so we'll be implementing that, and which will go higher next year. Our fee-for-service ratio, it's 24% versus 22% last year. And our fee-for-service growth ratio, we're at -1% versus 7% last year. A combination of Harvey and some of the divisions that have been slower to recover from some of that activity. Our fund balance activity action the last few months, you see those all the way to February. And our revenues, budget to actual, we're at overall 108 million versus 78 million received and billed, or we're at 72% into the year, and this is a 10-month into the year. In the general fund, we're at 90%, and in the special revenue funds, we're at 49%, partial because of that, because we incur the expense, and then we bill the following month for the special revenue funds. Our budget to in our annual or monthly amendments, rather, you see those by each month that we bring those to the board. And then our expenditures, our budget to actual, we're at 69% of the year, where 10% indicates an 83% of the year's lapse. So we're also not spending as much. So that means that we should have savings at the end of the school year. Special revenues are 66%, and overall we're going to be at 64% as of June 30th. Our donations for the month are, for the month of June, were $33,032, and year to date we're at $176,893. There were some donations from Choice Partners, Head Start, Safe and Secures, CASE, and Head Start. Those are the divisions that received donations during the month. Our year-to-date, and I'd like to make a correction on that number. See where it says 435M, it should be 435B. It should be billion instead of million. That's where we're at in terms of the values as of June, where we started at 399 billion, we're now at 335 billion. Year to date, we are at taxes 22,192,253, are collected 99.6%. However, look at the delinquent tax, we're at minus 15%, and that's because of all the refunds that have been given some of the protests and the refunds that have been recommended by the tax office and the appraisal district. And so we're actually in the 98th percentile when you take that into account. Our expenditures for HCAD and in the tax office, we're at $608,092 year to date in our payments to the appraisal district and the tax office. Disbursements for the month were $4,533,774, making up of 601 checks, 522 transactions, and 7 transfers. The detail of that is included in your packet and posted on our website as well. And then in our segment information, our benefit variance for educator certification, we're at minus $294,906. Records management is doing well at $198,334. School-based therapy as well at $446,485. And our schools at $1,618,112. Our choice partners, our benefit variance is $2,403,344 as of the 10th month of the year. Our budget amendments are, we got 2 grants, one for CASE 21st Century for $1,652,621 and $1,492,500. And then we received the early Head Start grant budget for $1,286,326 and early Head Start of $191,554, totaling of additional grants of $4,623,003. In our construction PSE update, we had a committee meeting this month, and we have $10,700,453 available for the PFC, and so these are the payments and the information provided to the PFC committee. The recommendation is, the target is to look at the construction period and being able to be ready by August 2019. Questions on the first report before I go into the investment report? On the investment report, our total portfolio is $44,621,019. Our PFC is $10,700,453. Over 75% is in Techstar, 4% in TechSpool, 8% in Lone Star, and Chase Bank 13%. The portfolio for the PFC, it's 99% in TechSpool and 1% in Bank of Texas. The performance from a year ago, a change is $48,830. And pretty much right now everything is overnight. We're riding the interest rates as they continue to go higher, and so it's laddering up, and so we're stepping up into the higher interest rates. We have earned so far this year $305,449 in interest earnings, and the PFC has earned $123,156, which will cover some of the cost for the safety security for the PFC AB West. We're earning an average of 1.86, and the benchmark is 1.94. So as soon as the rates stop increasing, then we'll start to extend, and we'll extend our portfolio. And this chart tells you how the rates have come from a year ago, from 0.37 to 1.92 so far as of June 30th of this year. Questions on any of the two reports? Thank you.
Before we do I have a motion?
Louis?
Yes, sir.
B1.
Okay.
I move to, I have a motion.
Okay, got a motion, and do I have a second? Second. Got a second by Dr. Moore. What'd you say? I hear somebody say something.
B1.
We got B1 already. Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion for all the consensus items, except for B1, and we have a second. Do I have any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand. Michael. All opposed? Okay. Any abstentions? We have 6-1, correct? Okay. All right, so then do I have a motion on B1?
I move, I have a motion, yes.
Okay, how about a second? Okay, I'll second it. Do I have any discussion? Yes, sir.
That was the meeting where we thought we had a quorum and we did not, correct?
Is that the one in question? Yes. So there was no meeting, therefore we have no minutes. What action?
Principal.
Oh, okay.
Because action was taken at that meeting, my recommendation would be to approve the minutes because it happened.
Okay.
That will be ratified later in the agenda to cure the deficiency that was taken at that meeting.
All right.
I don't see how we can approve minutes of hiring somebody that we couldn't have hired.
The minutes merely reflect the action taken at that meeting and a motion was made and seconded and
but we're ratifying
were
something
voting.
we couldn't have done.
We haven't got there yet.
No, I'm saying by voting for this, that's saying we did it when we couldn't do it.
The minutes merely reflect what took place, including who was there and who was not there. And my recommendation is, yes, it was deficient in compliance with the Open Meetings Act, and that will, the board can fix that later, but that action still happened. Somebody made a motion, somebody seconded, and people voted. And so the minutes accurately reflect that.
I think we're safer not to approve them and to have a new vote on that item instead of ratifying it.
Maybe if we put it on the agenda to after we do the ratification. I imagine there's a ratification.
That's fine too.
Maybe does that make more sense to do the ratification, then approve the minutes?
I'm voting no on the minutes.
I don't doubt you, and I'm fine with that.
All right, let's just have a vote then. Okay, all in favor of the B1, please raise your hand.
This is Erica.
Erica?
Sorry. President Evans, I would prefer to move the vote on the minutes to after executive. You can't hear?
You would rather have the vote on the minutes after we do the ratification? Is that what you're saying?
No, more questions.
Okay. All right. I'm okay with that. We'll just table this particular item until after the executive session then.
Mr. Dick and Mr. Evans would
I'm okay with
consent
it.
to withdraw their motion.
I'm okay.
I'm okay.
All right, so we have passed all, but B1 is being tabled to after executive session. We're going to go to non-consensus. Okay, the non-consensus 8A, consider adoption of the Harris County Department of Education FY 18-19 proposed annual budget total $117,135,572. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a
Second.
Got a motion and I have a second. Do I have any discussion?
I've got a question.
Okay, go ahead.
How does adopting this budget affect our tax rate if we want to adopt a lower tax rate that I had asked about that would bring in the same amount of revenue as last year approximately? Because I think there was about a $500,000 difference.
Sure, we would have to come back and revisit and bring an amendment.
Right.
Well, if the tax rate changes, you could have been this.
Right. I mean, right now, it's an estimate based on the parameters that we know. It more than likely is going to change based on the appraisal district or whatever the values are. So we will have to bring back a recommendation based on how we meet those parameters based on the values.
Well, the property values, have they already taken consideration what's going to happen because of all the flooding and harvest?
Yes.
Not yet.
Erica, did you have a question?
She's waving her hand.
No? Okay. All right, anybody else? Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? So it passes 6-1. Okay. 8B, consider contract amendment number 2 to the service agreement with Zenith Learning, Zenith Premier Inc., RFP 17/017LB in the amount not to exceed $220,000. It's an increase of $75,000 to provide substitute teachers and teaching assistants to the Harris County Department of Education Head Start Early Head Start program.
So moved.
Got a motion by Mr. Wolf. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a second by Dr. Moore. Do I have any discussion? Hearing no discussion, let's have a vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. There you go. Okay, it passes 7-0. Okay. Number 8C, consider acceptance of the notice of award, Amendment 1 for Early Head Start Child Care Partnership, carryover request from the Department of Health and Human Services Administration for Children and Families in the amount of $1,513,287 for the 2017-2018 program year. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion, I have a second. Why are we voting on something so late? And good afternoon.
Good afternoon. This is the actual acceptance. You approved the actual grant itself to submit it a few months ago. We just received the NOGA that says this is your award notice. So we're just accepting it so that we can do the budget amendment so that we can spend the money.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, anybody else?
Don't leave.
Don't leave. Mr. Summer has a question.
So how long did it take us to have the grant approved?
About 3 months from HHS from the time we turned it.
Did the grant late too?
No, sir. The grant was a carryover grant. It was submitted, I want to say in February.
I got you, carryover. Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, bye.
As the public can tell, we don't like to vote on things that are in past. All right, all in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, motion passes 7-0. Consider approval of the service agreement with Christian Allen, RFP 18/050KJ to provide HCDE workshops, district presentations, and coaching consulting services for HCDE Teaching and Learning Center. for the period of 9/1 of 2018 through 8/31/2019 in the aggregate amount of $64,800. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A motion by Mr. Dick. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a second by Dr. Moore. Do I have a discussion? Mr. Sumner?
Is this something new that we're doing?
Here's a lady who has all the answers.
No, sir. We worked with Kristen Allen for several years.
But it wasn't, this is not a renewal of the contract then?
She's operating on an RFP. She is a vendor that provides additional support to our current director, Nicole Shanahan, because we have a huge need for more math support in the county.
Remember how much we paid her last year?
It was under 50,000.
Yeah, it was just short of under 50,000. The RFP was approved about a month and a half, or 2 months ago. Because the contract is over 50,000, it has to come back to you for approval.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else? No further discussion. Let's have a vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes 7-0.
Louis,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to move 8E into executive session for some legal advice.
Okay with that? Okay, we're going to table 8E until we have a chance to talk with our board attorney, and we'll bring it back when we come out of executive session. Okay, we're going to go to 8F that was added. Let's see here. It's consider approval of job order contracting method of construction under Chapter 2269 and the master job order contract with Quality Security Systems, Inc. Choice Partners Job 15/037JN-07 to install a new fire alarm system at HCDE Fortis Academy. This is not to exceed $106,000. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion, a second. I have any discussion? Hearing none, let's have it. Go ahead.
I have a question. Was this added as a result of the fire marshal requiring a sprinkler system or something?
Well, it's an addition. It's a requirement based on what we got back from the county, and we are adding a kitchen system. So the system that we have in place right now, we have to upgrade that system to be addressable with the kitchen that we're adding at Fortis Academy.
For the kitchen or for the whole facility?
Well, it'll be the whole facility, but that's part of it for the new system.
Okay, I understand it.
Yes, sir.
So
the requirement was added because of the fact we were going to be cooking there.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else? All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously. Okay. Under the Texas Government Code, pursuant to any and all purposes permitted by sections 551.001 through 551.084, included but not limited to 551.071 and 551.074. It is now 2:06, and we are going into executive session. Back in session. We're going to take first thing we're going to look at is number 10B, consider ratification of employment of the principal for AB School East. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Make the motion.
Sir?
That's a separate issue.
Separate issue.
Okay. I'll make the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and you got a second. Do I have any discussion?
Second.
Okay. We got it. All right. Any discussion?
Eric is not on yet.
Well, we're okay. All right, no discussion. All in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, I get motion passes 6-0 because Trustee Carter is not online right now, so we can't consider her. Okay, now we're going to go back to the minutes. ratification? Would you like me to do it again? No, sir. Okay. I'm going in my order. That's right.
I think we need to find Trustee Lee first.
Yeah, we can't find her. She's lost. The technology's trying to work on her, but we're
About
still.
to lose a quorum if we're not careful.
Huh?
We're about to lose a quorum if we're not careful.
Yeah. All right, so we're now going to look at B1, which was the special board meeting minutes that we tabled earlier. So do I have a motion?
I move that we approve those with an addendum. I'll hand this to you, Carl, after I read it. This meeting was not a proper meeting under the Texas Open Meetings Act. However, the action purported to be taken at the meeting, i.e. the hiring of the principal for AB School East, was validated at the board's meeting on July 18th, 2018, in compliance with the act.
Do I have a second?
Validated, okay.
Ratified. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a second by Mr. Dick. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, motion passes 6-0. Trustee Carter is still not to be found yet.
She said that she's on and can hear. She just sent me a text message. And
Yeah, but I have to see her apparently, otherwise. We're going to do our technology director now.
Oh, Ronnie.
All right, where's it at? All right, we're going to look at 10A, employment of the Director of Technology. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. Got a motion and a second. Do I have any discussion? Hearing no discussion, let's have a vote. All in favor? Motion passes 6-0. Okay, we also have vote for what? Secretary. Okay.
Hello, is my mic working?
Yes.
I don't know if the video.
Can you click on your camera?
Tell her that.
Trustee Carter, if you can hear us, the Open Meetings Act video conferencing statute requires true two-way communication and requires that we have to see you, in which we can't see you right now. So although you can hear us and see us and we can hear you, it's not in accordance with the act unless we can all see you.
She can have discussion.
No.
No.
Just not vote.
Okay, Sarah, I understand. I don't know why. I mean, I can see everybody.
I think he's working
and
on
Diane.
it.
All right, can we go ahead and
Yes.
proceed? All right.
President Evans, I would prefer to have Ms. Lee Carter to be with us to vote on the next two agenda items.
Me hang up and I'm gonna hang up and call you. Hey, can you call me?
What's going on?
How so?
They're leaving.
So you can't get her?
Wait.
Oh.
Got her.
Hey. All right.
Okay, in regard to the board secretary.
Louis, I have an agenda, I have a motion to make.
Okay, please.
I move that we offer this position to Melissa Smith.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
I got 3 seconds.
Whoever did it first.
You're the voice I heard, actually, John. Okay. All right, so I have a motion, I have a second. Do I have any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of Melissa Smith, please raise your hand. Okay, all opposed? All abstaining? The motion passes 4-3.
Hold on, I think, did you abstain?
I did.
Erica raised her hand.
Yeah, she was abstaining.
No, two again.
Oh, they were against?
No, I'm voting no. I was voting no.
And Diane, were you voting no?
I was voting no.
Oh, okay. I got 4-4, 2 against. I abstained, right.
So 4-2-1.
4-2-1. All right. Then we have to do item F, 8F. Not 8F, 8E. Consider approval of the Hillco Partners contract for government relations consulting. Do
I move that we indefinitely table this item.
I have a motion to table. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a second. Do I have any discussion?
Yeah, clarification of that.
I said indefinitely, not a point certain. So it could be removed from the table in the future if somebody asks for the agenda item.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Do I have any discussion? What he's looking for? Does anybody have any other questions, discussion? Okay, all in favor of tabling this item, please raise your hand. You want to vote on it? Okay, all opposed? Okay, motion fails. Okay, so do I have a motion now?
So moved.
Okay, a motion for item E. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a second by Dr. Troutman. Do I have any discussion? No discussion? All right, all in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, all opposed? Okay, motion fails. I'm going to stay. There's no point. It's dead. All right? All right, so motion fails 4-2-1. She voted against.
So there were 4 no votes.
Okay? All right, do I have any other motions? Okay, a second?
Second.
All in favor? Harris County Department of Education's meeting is adjourned at 3:34.
Showtime.
Just call the meeting to order and say the time.
Okay, we're back. It is 3:38. And at this point, we're here for a grievance on Kenneth Montgomery, and I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Murphy Classy.
Yeah. This meeting of the Harris County Department of Education Board of Trustees is convened on July 18th, 2018. For the record, my name is Murphy Classing, and I am an attorney who will be representing the HCDE Board of Trustees in today's meeting. I will also be the presiding officer of the grievance hearing today. The following members of the Board of Trustees are present: Board Vice President Eric Dick, Trustee George Moore, Trustee Don Sumners, and Trustee Michael Wolf. For the record, a quorum is present. The next item on the agenda is the Level 3 grievance hearing of Keith Montgomery. The board will hear and consider the Level 3 grievance of Mr. Montgomery today. Before convening the grievance hearing, the board can adjourn if the board wants to executive session for legal advice, or we can continue. Does the board wish to convene for closed session at this time?
No.
All right. First matter to consider is whether this meeting will be conducted in public, open session or closed. That has been determined. The complaint involves a personnel matter. Consequently, under Texas Government Code Section 551.074, this meeting will be held in closed session unless the grieving employee makes a written request for an open hearing. On Mr. Montgomery's Level 3 grievance form, he indicated that he desired the hearing before the Board of Trustees to be conducted in open session. Mr. Montgomery, is it still your desire for the board to conduct your consolidated Level 3 hearing in open session?
Yes.
Because Mr. Montgomery has made a written request that this hearing be conducted in open session, the hearing will begin in open session. However, if at any time Mr. Montgomery brings a complaint or charge against an HCDE employee, the board will assess whether to conduct that portion of the hearing in closed session in accordance with Section 551.082 of the Texas Open Meetings Act. In accordance with applicable law, HCDE is making a record of this hearing, including an audible electronic recording of all oral testimony and/or argument. In order to make the most accurate record possible, each speaker must clearly identify him or herself before speaking. Please also avoid talking when others are speaking so that the record will reflect the proceedings accurately. Mr. Montgomery, I understand you have legal counsel representing you at the hearing today. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Would you please introduce your representative here to the board for the record?
My name is Christopher Walhagen. I'm with the law firm of Watson Company Lawyers Limited. I'm representing Keith Montgomery today.
And would the representative for the administration please identify yourself?
Good afternoon, Sarah Langlois. I'm representing the HCD administration today, along with County School Superintendent James Colbert Jr.
For the record, the board has received copies of the record of Mr. Montgomery's grievance, including the Level 1 and Level 2 records. Included in the record are copies of Mr. Montgomery's written complaint forms, the documents presented at the previous levels, and the written responses at the previous levels. These documents will be considered part of the record of this Level 3 hearing. These same documents have been distributed to Mr. Montgomery's counsel as well as to Ms. Langlois, the HCDE administration, and the Board of Trustees. Pursuant to HCD policy, DGBA local, as board president and presiding officer, Board President Lewis Evans informed Mr. Montgomery and Ms. Langlois of the guidelines for today's hearing. The June 27, 2018 notice to Mr. Watts and Ms. Langlois is included in the packet provided to the board. On to Mr. Montgomery's grievance. On February 26, 2018, Keith Montgomery, an assistant principal at HCDE's High Point East campus, filed a grievance relating to a written reprimand he received on February 20th, 2018 from HCDE's Senior Director of Schools, Anthony Mays. On February 9th, 2018, Mr. Montgomery emailed a list of alleged concerns relating to HCDE's High Point East campus. Mr. Montgomery's email is Attachment A to Mr. Montgomery's Level 1 grievance, which is behind tab 1 of the record. Given the serious nature of some of the allegations made by Mr. Montgomery in his email, the HCDE administration began an investigation. As part of that investigation process, Mr. Mays directed Mr. Montgomery to provide him with written responses to his inquiries no later than 4 p.m. on Monday, February 19, 2018. Mr. Mays' directive is included as Attachment B to Mr. Montgomery's Level 1 grievance, which is behind tab 1 of the record. Via an email sent on Monday, February 19, 2018 at 3:26 p.m., Mr. Montgomery requested a 72-hour extension to the 4 p.m. deadline. This email is included in the record at tab 1/B. Mr. Montgomery did not provide any of the information he was requested to provide by the deadline. Mr. Mays gave Mr. Montgomery a written reprimand for failing to comply with his directive and issued a new directive to Mr. Montgomery to provide the requested information by February 23, 2018. That document is included as Attachment C to Mr. Montgomery's Level 1 grievance, which is behind tab 1 of the record. Mr. Montgomery contends that written reprimand is, quote, retaliatory and unfair, end quote, and requests that the written reprimand be removed from his file. Mr. Montgomery's complaint was heard at Level 1 by Mr. Jonathan Parker, Assistant Superintendent of Academic Support Services. Mr. Parker found that despite receiving an official directive to provide information to Mr. Mays, Mr. Montgomery failed to provide written responses to any of the 34 inquiries listed in the directive by the deadline, and as a result, Mr. Mays issued Mr. Montgomery a written disciplinary memorandum for failing to follow a directive, which constitutes insubordination. Mr. Parker found that based on his review of the documents and consideration of the statements revealed no evidence to support Mr. Montgomery's allegation that he received a, quote, retaliatory and unfair written reprimand, end quote. Mr. Parker found that, quote, the facts clearly show that the written reprimand was entirely based on Mr. Montgomery's failure to comply with a written directive and was not retaliatory or unfair, end quote. Mr. Parker found that it was appropriate and within HCDE policies and guidelines, including HCDE's progressive discipline model, for Mr. Montgomery to receive a written reprimand for failure to comply with the directive given by Mr. Mays. Mr. Parker concluded that the written disciplinary notice was justified and should remain in Mr. Montgomery's file. Mr. Parker also denied as untimely any allegations or complaints about events that occurred outside of the mandatory timelines set forth in Board Policy DGBA Local, including the allegations raised outside of the Level 1 grievance form during the Level 1 conference. Finally, Mr. Parker noted that Mr. Montgomery had violated the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, known as FERPA, by disclosing personally identifiable information of a student to his attorney, Mr. Watts, which Mr. Watts disclosed during the Level 1 conference. Mr. Montgomery then appealed to Level 2. Mr. Montgomery's complaint was heard at Level 2 by Dr. Kimberly McLeod, HCDE's Assistant Superintendent for Education and Enrichment. Dr. McLeod also found that Mr. Montgomery's allegations were not supported by the facts and that his requested remedy was unjustified. Dr. McLeod found that the February 20th, 2018 written reprimand was warranted and was within Mr. May's supervisory authority to issue. Dr. McLeod found that based on her review of the documentation and consideration of the oral statements during the grievance conference, that no evidence existed to support Mr. Montgomery's argument that the written reprimand was a retaliatory tactic or had anything to do with Mr. Montgomery's pending lawsuit against HCDE. Dr. McLeod also denied all other complaints and requested relief raised by Mr. Montgomery for the first time at Level 2, as they are outside the scope of Mr. Montgomery's filed grievance in accordance with Board Policy DGBA Local. Mr. Montgomery has appealed Dr. McLeod's Level 2 decision to Level 3, the Board. I will now ask each member of this Board whether he or she is able to serve as an impartial member of the Board and hearing body and to arrive at a decision based solely upon evidence presented at this hearing in consideration of Mr. Montgomery's grievance today. Any member not able to act in such a manner may say so and ask to be excused from further participation. Board members, please indicate by stating yes or no whether you are able to serve as an impartial member.
Eric Dick, Board Vice President, yes.
George Moore, yes.
Don Sumners, yes.
Michael Wolf, yes.
The procedure today will be to allow Mr. Montgomery and the HCDE administration to make a presentation. This will not be an evidentiary hearing and there will be no cross-examination of witnesses. This is not a trial and no formal rules of evidence or procedure will apply. Mr. Montgomery will make his presentation first, followed by the administration. This presentation will be conducted as follows. Each side will have 15 minutes to make their presentation. Mr. Montgomery will make a presentation to the board, then the administration will make its presentation. Each side will then have 5 minutes for rebuttal or final argument. The board members will then ask any questions of the parties. I would like to remind both parties that pursuant to Board Policy DGBA Local, this Level 3 appeal is limited to the issues and documents considered at Level 2. As such, no new arguments may be raised during this hearing. The sole issue before the board today is whether Mr. Montgomery's requested relief of removing the February 20th, 2018 written reprimand from his file is warranted. Are there any questions before we begin?
No.
No, sir.
I will serve as the timekeeper. When your time expires, you must stop your presentation. If either side would like any kind of warning on the 15 minutes, let me know now and I'll be happy to provide a warning.
No, thanks.
All right. Then Mr. Montgomery and Mr. Watts, you may proceed with your presentation. And again, please identify yourself for the record before speaking.
Good afternoon. I'm Christopher Walhagen. I'll be representing Mr. Keith Montgomery today. May it please the members of the board, council, superintendent. First off, I would like to re-allege and incorporate all the factual and legal allegations and requests for remedy and relief from the prior two grievances that have been filed by Mr. Montgomery. Of course, primarily the relief requested that the written reprimand from February 20th, 2018 be struck and expunged from his record. One of the things that we were very adamant about and very concerned about at our law firm is the level of due process that is afforded to government employees. And one of the things that we feel is key is that in order for a government employee to be afforded due process, the state can't take any actions that are arbitrary or capricious and can't act in bad faith when dealing with their employees. So this is something that's been, this is something that's been decided for us by the U.S. Supreme Court. In 1970, in the case Goldberg versus Kelly, the Supreme Court stated, relevant constitutional restraints apply to the discharge from public employment. And then, the extent to which procedural due process must be afforded the recipient is influenced by the extent to which he may be condemned to suffer grievous loss and depends upon whether the recipient's interest in avoiding that loss outweighs the governmental interest in summary adjudication. It may not, they go on to say, it may not deny a benefit to a person on a basis that infringes his constitutionally protected interests, especially his interest in freedom of speech, for the government could deny benefit to a person because of his constitutionally protected speech or associations. His exercise of those freedoms would in effect be penalized and inhibited. And the courts also stated that in Board of Regents of State Colleges versus Roth, that the courts also made clear that property interests protected by procedural due process extend well beyond actual ownership of real estate, chattels, or money. That is to say that government employees have this interest in due process in their job. And further, also, one of the things that Mr. Montgomery has been run afoul of with the administration is in reporting crimes. And the Supreme Court of the state of Texas in 1985, in the Sabine Pilot Services cases, determined that there's a public policy exception to the at-will employment doctrine, in that someone can't be have an adverse employment action just for when they're told to do something that's illegal. The Texas Supreme Court stated, we now hold that public policy as expressed in the laws of the state and the United States, which carry criminal penalties, requires a very narrow exception to the employment at will doctrine. That narrow exception covers only the discharge of an employee for the sole reason that the employee refused to perform an illegal act. So, and again, Mr. Montgomery's grievance is based primarily on the unlawful retaliation he experienced by the reprimand that he received on February 20th of 2018. Again, going back, on February 9th of 2018, Mr. Montgomery had submitted an email that contained a number of concerns he had for the safety of students at the HCDE High Point East campus. He was contacted 6 days later by the senior director of schools, instructing Mr. Montgomery to respond with additional information by February 19th of 2018. Now, what had already happened is, in bad faith, the agents of the Harris County Department of Education had placed Mr. Montgomery on a performance improvement plan.
Improvement plan, that's not at issue in the grievance today.
Okay. Well, again, I feel it's important background for the case that we're making, so.
It's not in the record.
Just make sure, it's sustained, just make sure that you stick to the issues of the level 2.
Okay. So, before responding to the So before responding to the reply from the Senior Director of Schools, Mr. Montgomery had wanted to go over his response with his attorney, who at the time was indisposed because he was undergoing a cardio-invasive procedure, as Mr. Montgomery had said. And also, Mr. Montgomery had sent a copy of his concerns to the TEA. And this is evidence that Mr. Montgomery has that of where this animus against him had come from. The fact that he was going outside of the chain of command, he was going outside of the Harris County Department of Education to report things that he felt were going awry. Okay. So he had asked for an extension of time to respond, but instead of being afforded just simple, straightforward courtesy, he was reprimanded for insubordination on February 20th in the official written reprimand. The written reprimand, which includes what we deem to be a pejorative reference to the fact that Mr. Montgomery has sought the assistance of counsel in an effort just to stand on his rights and try to protect his employment with the Harris County Department of Education, as well as, of course, trying to protect the interests of the students. Now, looking at the document, the February 20th written reprimand, there's just one document, and if you look at and he's told he's being insubordinate, but then in the exact same document, in the fourth paragraph, bold and underlined, it contains only the following language: an official directive to provide additional information no later than 4 p.m. on Friday, February 23rd, 2018. So if it was such a big deal to have responded by the 19th, they simply turn around and say, no, it's okay, you can have this extension. So it's fairly clear that the Harris County Department of Education waived whatever right it might have had to receive a response by February 19th, 2018, and it granted Mr. Montgomery's request for an extension of time. I simply say that the department cannot blow hot and cold on Mr. Montgomery's request for an extension of time by claiming he's committed insubordination, yet in the next sentence, grant him the very request he had asked for. Can a state sign an order for execution and grant reprieve in the very same instrument? And indeed, yesterday in Mr. Montgomery's Chapter 21 hearing.
Objection, that's not in the record.
Yeah, that's sustained. That's not part of the record that's before us, I don't believe.
Okay. Well, it deals with testimony from the Senior Director of Schools regarding the very document, the February 20th reprimand that Mr. Montgomery had received.
Right, but allowing testimony from yesterday's hearing at this hearing would kind of thwart the appellate process that we're doing here. So I think we need to stick to the issues that were considered at level 2.
All right, understood. So again, in conclusion, I'd like to reallege and incorporate all the factual legal allegations and requests for remedies and relief from the prior 2 grievances filed by Mr. Montgomery against Harris County Department of Education. Primarily, Mr. Montgomery asked that the written reprimand from February 20th, 2018 be expunged from his record. That's all I have to say for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Langlois, you may proceed with your presentation. Again, please identify yourself for the record.
Good afternoon. I'm Sarah Langlois, a partner at Karcheski, Bradshaw, Spalding, Nichols, Lampin, Langlois, and I'm proud to represent the HCDE administration today and to request that the board deny Mr. Montgomery's grievance and support the administration's decision at level 2. I'd like to remind the board that as the grievant, Mr. Montgomery bears the burden of proof before the board, meaning that he must prove to you that both the law and the facts support the relief he has requested. Mr. Montgomery's counsel referenced procedural due process and quoted some court cases about that. The procedural due process is being granted here through this grievance process. Additionally, the reference to the employment at will doctrine is inapplicable here because at the time Mr. Montgomery was issued this written reprimand, he was under a contract. You may recall that Mr. Montgomery sent all HCDE trustees, several HCDE administrators, and TEA an email on February 9th, 2018, in which he listed a litany of alleged concerns concerning HCDE and the campus at which he serves as an assistant principal, High Point East. That's behind tab 1. Some of the alleged concerns were negligible, like teachers allowing students to play chess. Others were very serious, such as alleging that allowing teachers to teach classes that they are not certified to teach, inappropriate touching of students, and falsifying documents. Due to the serious nature of some of those alleged concerns, the HCDE administration to open an investigation. Anthony Mays, Senior Director of Schools, headed the investigation. As part of that investigation, Mr. Mays issued a formal written directive to Mr. Montgomery to provide Mr. Mays with more detailed information for each of Mr. Montgomery's alleged 34 concerns. For example, many of the alleged concerns, not crimes as alleged, raised by Mr. Montgomery included accusations of actions or inactions taken by the administration at the school. Mr. Montgomery is a member of the school's administration, so one of the questions Mr. Mays asked Mr. Montgomery was to provide additional information on what actions, if any, Mr. Montgomery took as an administrator at High Point East in response to the allegations he raised. Included in the written directive was a deadline of 4 p.m. on Monday, February 19th, 2018, which was 4 full days, to provide Mr. Mays with the requested information. Instead of supplying the requested information to Mr. Mays by the deadline, Mr. Montgomery waited until the final hour, 23 minutes, in fact, before the deadline, to ask for an extension, claiming a need to confer with his attorney. Mr. Montgomery chose to not supply any of the requested information for any of his alleged 34 concerns to Mr. Mays by the deadline. Consequently, in accordance with HCDE's progressive discipline model, the next day, February 20th, Mr. Mays issued Mr. Montgomery a written reprimand for failing to follow an official directive and issued a new directive for Mr. Montgomery to supply the requested information by Friday, February 23rd. The written disciplinary notice states that Mr. Montgomery failed to comply with the administrative directive given to him, which constituted insubordination. There's no animus on the part of the HCDE administration, no bad faith. Mr. Montgomery failed to follow through with complying with the directive, and that action has consequences. The administration did not, quote, waive its right for additional information by issuing the written reprimand, nor was his extension granted. A new directive was issued to Mr. Montgomery because the HCDE administration still needed the information that was requested. Mr. Montgomery is now asking the board to second guess and overturn the decision of the administration to give Mr. Montgomery a written reprimand for wholly failing to comply with the directive, a decision that was within the administration's authority to make within their discretion. Mr. Montgomery's request that the board remove the reprimand he received for his conduct is unwarranted. With this request, Mr. Montgomery is asking the board to revamp the department's professional protocol of progressive discipline. HCDE, like many, if not all, school districts, uses the progressive discipline model for employee discipline. Within that model, the HCDE administration has discretion on what level of discipline to issue, including to issue a written disciplinary notice, like is in this case with Mr. Montgomery, suspend the employee, and or make a recommendation that the individual's employment be terminated. This isn't a grievance about whether Mr. Montgomery should have been reprimanded. Quite frankly, the decision of whether Mr. Montgomery deserved a written reprimand is an administrative decision. Had Mr. Montgomery even attempted to comply with the directive, and had he supplied even an ounce of information in compliance with the directive, the administration likely would not have issued a reprimand. Instead, Mr. Montgomery waited until minutes before the deadline to ask for an extension, allegedly because he needed to confer with his attorney, who was undergoing heart surgery. Surely Mr. Montgomery's attorney was aware of this heart surgery before 23 minutes of his client's deadline to comply with an administrative directive. As Mr. Parker noted in his Level 1 decision, quote, requesting an extension minutes before the required deadline does not eliminate or change the directive, nor does it permit an employee to violate the directive, end quote. In the event Mr. Montgomery felt the need to confer with his attorney prior to complying with the directive, he shouldn't have waited until the last minute to do so. Additionally, as Mr. Parker noted in his Level 2 decision, much of the detailed information requested from Mr. Montgomery related to students, including personally identifiable information of students protected by the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA, which Mr. Montgomery could not legally disclose or share with his attorney. Mr. Montgomery was given approximately 96 hours to comply with the directive. The directive clearly stated a deadline to comply, and that failure to comply with the directive could lead to disciplinary action. Mr. Montgomery wholly failed to comply with the directive. He submitted no response to any of the 34 inquiries to Mr. Mays by the deadline. Failing to meet deadlines and failing to comply with the directive have consequences. The administration determined that a written disciplinary notice was warranted and was the appropriate consequence for Mr. Montgomery's actions. I submit to you that had the HCDE administration not issued Mr. Montgomery a reprimand in response to Mr. Montgomery's failure to comply with the directive, they would have been in noncompliance for failing to enforce HCDE's progressive discipline model. Employees are to be issued disciplinary consequences for failing to comply with directives. That's what occurred here. For all of the reasons today, we respectfully request that the board deny Mr. Montgomery's grievance in full and uphold the decision of the administration at Level 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Montgomery. And tell me your name again, I apologize.
Mr. Walhagen.
Mr. Walhagen, you may proceed with any rebuttal or closing remarks. Again, identify yourself for the record before speaking, and this is for a 5-minute period of time.
Okay. Yeah, I have some things I'd like to mention in rebuttal. In citing the Supreme Court cases, we're referring not just to the procedural due process, but the substantive due process that Mr. Montgomery has in his property interest in his government employment or liberty interest, and we're saying that in order to be deprived of that, there can't just be some kind of arbitrary or capricious reason. There can't be bad faith on the part of that. And again, as to the doctrine of the public policy exception for reporting crimes, that is something that I would venture to say should apply to contract employment as well as at-will employment. But also going to the issue of the exact amount of time that Mr. Montgomery asked for in order to have more time to respond to the response that the director of schools had given him to his email that expressed his concern. Again, there's simply no absolute authority, as far as I know, as far anything in the Texas Education Code or the board policies that that says that you can't ask for an extension 1 hour before it's their due or a half hour before they're due. He simply would, when he got close to reaching the time that they were due, he asked for an extension before they were due. And there's no good argument of any kind of prejudice that the Harris County Department of Education would have experienced not getting their responses on February 19th and instead waiting until the 23rd. And so that's why, but again, bolsters our argument that this was done out of some kind of animus towards Mr. Montgomery and in order to retaliate against him. And again, going also the issue as to whether it's the same directive or new directive, it's in the same document as signed and sent to him. And so again, it goes to this sense that there's no reason why he couldn't have consulted his attorney and been given a few more days to give some of the more specific information that had been elicited of him. Those are all my comments for now. Thank you.
Ms. Langlois and Mr. Colbert, you may proceed with your rebuttal or closing remarks, and again, identify yourself for the record.
James Colbert, Superintendent of Harris County Department of Education. I would just like to start by that there are a number of things involving this incident that's fairly unprecedented for me as an administrator. I've been in public education for 24 years. I've been an administrator for 20 of those years. And there's a number of things about this incident that really alarmed me, even when I found out about them, but even more so today. Let me go through a few of them. First, I find it interesting that we have an administrator, an assistant principal, a veteran, that has the time to put together a 5-page bulleted email and send it to 12 different people about all of the things that are out of compliance with a campus that he serves on. But he can't seem to find the time to address the issues that he's documenting. When I first heard about this, I read it. I couldn't believe that we had an assistant principal that would witness things, and some of the things we did have issues with. But he would witness them, but yet do nothing to intervene to correct any of those matters, but instead run to his office and put it on his tally sheet of things that he saw that was going wrong. Without question, administration jumped on these issues and took all of them very seriously. But we also had the issue of what were you doing while you were watching some of those things happening? And so that's where the directive came from. Mr. Mays gave him an appropriate directive. It was timely. It was clearly articulated, very specific, when it was due, what was necessary to be done. It was not unrealistic. Mr. Montgomery did not disagree with the directive when it was given to him. And then he takes, within 30 minutes of when the directive is due, he wants a 72-hour extension because his attorney is going under a medical procedure. That's absolutely ridiculous. And perhaps whatever infractions we had on the campus, that's why, because we had those kind of practices happening there. I have told this board a number of times, and I stand true to it, that the administration of Harris County Department of Ed will address all issues of performance, regardless of who they are, regardless if they're administrators or teachers or TAs. We have a level of expectation, a professional expectation for all employees. And Mr. Montgomery has displayed a number of times of missing that mark. And so no one's retaliatory against him. Our administrators want him to perform and act like an administrator. The other issues that I have with the incidents that have happened are this specific grievance. Instead of, if he had used the same amount of energy to maybe correct some of the behaviors or his own behaviors that he has put into this grievance and to disrupt the climate and culture of that campus, we probably wouldn't be here right now. So I'm gonna keep my comments brief, but what I would also remind the board is this. Unprecedented that we would make it all the way to the level of the board over a reprimand. And for that, to the board, I apologize. I do not want people coming to this board and spending your time because they want a reprimand removed. I've never seen that before, and especially from an administrator. I've never seen that. But having said that, I think we need to be careful. We need to be extremely careful. If the board chooses not to honor and back up and support the administration and actually honor Mr. Montgomery, who is requesting for the reprimand to be removed, I would tell you get ready for a number of more grievances because it will be unprecedented. You're going to have a number of people wanting, every time they get written up or a directive, they're going to want to file a grievance and bring it to the board to try to supersede administrative authority so the board can make a ruling. That's what you hire and pay us to do. And everybody's held accountable. And apparently Mr. Montgomery does not like that, and he doesn't want to be held accountable. So we're here burning a lot of people's time because of this very matter. Having said that, I appreciate y'all entertaining this today, but I would ask that you support the administration and the decision that was made at the second level.
Thank you. Does any member of the board have any questions for either party? And if you do, please identify yourself for the record. Having no questions, now that the board has heard the grievances, the board will deliberate about the grievances in private and obtain legal advice before it decides what action to take, if any. No action will be taken in private. Throughout the decision-making process, the board shall consider only the information contained in the record of the previous levels and the information presented during this consolidated grievance proceeding. Would all parties and their representatives please be excused so the board may deliberate in private before the board decides whether to take any action. Time is now 4:17 o'clock, and we are going off the record and into private deliberations under section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code, which will not be on the record. Right. Yeah.
We're back. It's 4:35.
The closed meeting deliberation has concluded, and the board is now reconvening in open session. The time is 4:35 o'clock p.m. The HCDE Board of Trustees is now reconvened in open session. No action was taken in closed session.
Cool. Do I have a motion?
I move to grant Keith Montgomery's relief requested in this matter.
Do I have a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Oh, wait, actually, did we have any discussion?
Yeah.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Do I have any other motions? There you go.
Second.
The only thing left is, for the record, the announcement of the board's decision is made in the presence of the grievant, Mr. Montgomery.
Okay.